Hi, and welcome back to the HSP Connection. This is where we share our stories, insights, and strategies to help fellow highly sensitive people navigate their own path to living a fulfilling and meaningful life. We're on a mission to reclaim the word sensitive and help the world see the strength in sensitivity. Now, today, I'm not with Robbie, but I am with a wonderful guest that I can't wait to introduce you to. We have with us today Maggie Rose Cunningham. Now, Maggie is a coach, a trainer, and a Northern European shamanic practitioner. Ooh, can't wait for this conversation. And that's all I'm going to say for the intro. I'm going to say hello to Maggie, and then we're going to get into it. So, Maggie, hi.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to HSP Connection. It is wonderful to have you here.
It was wonderful to be here. I'm so excited to be coming and chatting with you, Philippa. And yeah, exploring that little Venn diagram between the sort of magical self and the highly sensitive self, which, yes, is my play area.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, so the magical self is just like, oh, yeah. And, you know, we just had, a tiny little chat because I didn't want to talk too much before we started recording about, this episode. And, this is going to be part of our healing series. And it's not sort of perhaps healing as people would necessarily think about, like we're not healing, I don't know, it's not like Reiki it kind of is because it's all energy and it's all lots of wonderful mystical things. But I was introduced to you and we had a chat and I thought, yeah, please come on the podcast because personally I'm super interested and I know that our audience is going to really love what you're going to tell us, even if it's new to them. And it is healing because for me, healing is about finding our way to our true self. So,
yes, I would agree with you. I think it's a journey, isn't it? And it's where you are in the journey and whether you're saying I'm going to somebody to receive healing because life has been really challenging, and particularly for highly sensitive people, we get overwhelmed, we get burnout. I've done that twice. It was fun.
Yeah.
But then we get to the point of going, oh, there's a healer in me, even if that healer is just mine. It's about what do I need and connecting in with that. And I think a lot of it is about that, isn't it? It's the healing, your own healing path.
Yes. Yeah. You see I'm just new already. You're going, yeah. So it's all my little light bulbs are going off in my head going, yes, absolutely. That is kind of what I've done without knowing that or what I'm doing without realizing that's what I'm doing. So I had a little look around your website and, your tagline, I think, or certainly what is on the top of all your pages is reclaim your magic. Oh, I love that. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey I'm presuming you reclaimed your magic, which is what leads you to where you are now.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I can. And I think there'll probably be some things that we resonate with very strongly. And maybe I'll bring a lot of extra bits in too. But I didn't know that I was highly sensitive. I was I'm about to say diagnosed, which is wrong, but I sort of discovered that I was highly sensitive quite late in life. But it was certainly sensitive was a word that was used about me a lot when I was a little girl, and not in a good way.
Yeah.
And in a sort of, I would say in a fear way. I was saying, my mum didn't do it in a judgment way. She did it in a fear way. Oh, she's so sensitive. Life is going to break her. Life is going to be hard. Life is going to be difficult. We've got to sort of try and toughen her up. I really, alongside that, I realised was a whole raft of things that I just wasn't able to give up. So when I was a little girl, I used to see people, I can only describe it as I saw people in Technicolor. So to me, my two best friends were this sort of deep red, delicious scented rose in a blue crystalline vase with little bits of sort of like iron and metal woven through her. And I sort of saw that when I saw them. And what I wanted to know is what I looked like to other people. I was like, what do I look like? What do I look like? But no one ever told me because obviously, that's not the way that they experienced other human beings. And I didn't realize that. And what I learned to do was to sort of hide that part of me because it wasn't always understood. And yeah, when you don't have people validating your own experience, you think, oh, there must be something wrong with me in the world. And it took a long time for me to realize that actually those skills, that ability to read other people's energy and to feel into, when I work with a client now, I will look at, I'll see a whole landscape for us to work with and play with and to find healing through. It's a sort of self-discovery journey, but it is a healing journey as well. But in that process of shutting down, all of those parts of me they got, I had such intense dreams. It was like this other world was always trying to sort of be there, and I was sort of trying to push it down. And I say to my mum, what's that woman doing at the top of our stairs? She seems really angry. And my mum would be like, there's no one there. It's nothing there. It's all in your mind. All those sorts of things. And but for me, I could still see them. So I was like, I don't understand what's happening here. And I started to suffer from chronic illness, like inflammatory illness in particularly, by the time I was about 11. I started out, I had some sinusitis, then I had lung problems, I couldn't breathe properly, I had scar tissue on my lungs, I didn't know why, I had stomach ulcers. And by the time I was 30, I'd had arthritis, like really severe arthritis for about 3 years. My whole body had gone crazy. And I went down the route of saying, well, okay, I'm going to do the scientific route of, I'm so grateful for the medical route that helped me. But I did a huge amount I was already working in magical circles at that time, sort of finding a place to sort of nourish this side of myself. But it led me to become a Reiki master and to become a crystal healer and to become, I was working as a Wiccan at that time. So I was a Wiccan initiate at that time. And all the way along through that, I wasn't just looking for my people who would say, yes, you're not mad. We experience these things in that way, which I did find. But I was also looking for something that was much harder to find, which was I was in a little bookshop when I was 14. And it was, I think it was hammocks. I don't know if hammocks even exist right now. And I was at that bookshelf that's got all of the self-help books and the feng shui books and the how to grow a bonsai tree books and the brew your own lentils at home, all of those sorts of things. They're all in that shelf, aren't they? They don't know where to put it. Yeah. And there was this little like golden and red book, and I saw it, and it felt like an electric shock went through my body. I cannot describe it in any other way. I was like, oh, and there's symbols on the front, a little bit like one. And I was like, oh, those are inside me. I don't know why I think that, but I just do. So I bought the book and I bought the little stones that came with them, and those were the runes, which are the free Latin alphabet that was in this country and in Germany and Scandinavia, the Old Norse and the Old Icelandic and the Anglo-Saxon. They just kept on talking to me all the way through. And I was looking for teachers, but I couldn't find many teachers. I found a few. But so I just amassed books and books and books and books until I knew the roots. And they are the sort of second part. So for me, when I talk about reclaiming your magic, I'm talking about reclaiming your magic in terms of like your personal aptitudes, what it is that you've been born with, all of these abilities to perceive and experience the world in a different way to other people. And I work with people who want to find that like the ancestral heritage of Northern Europe, of, as I said, like Anglo-Saxon Britain and Germany and Scandinavia. It's the two-pronged bit for me. I do work with lots of other traditions as well, because I'm a bit eclectic, because I think most of us are now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel as if those are the sort of two missions that just brought me to this place. And a huge number of my clients are following that two-pronged journey at the same time, and they're saying, I have a lot of clients in America, a lot in Australia, and they're sort of saying, I'm living on this land, and I know that my ancestors came here and pushed down or stole or appropriated in some way. They either repressed or appropriated the cultures that were here, and I don't want to participate in that. anymore. I feel like I need to stand on my own 2 feet and find out about where my family came from and what they did. And I think there is part of that is sensitivity, like a heightened sense of I'm drawing off somebody else's ancestral energy field. And maybe that's not okay with me, or I want to be able to at least do both. So, yeah, most of my clients would say they sort of fall into that spectrum of I am highly sensitive and I'm looking at that ancestral connection at the same time. And I think that that is a healing journey, but I think it's not just an individual healing journey, it's a collective healing journey. Yeah.
Wow, I'm transfixed. I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh wow, that is so so interesting. And it's sort of like there's lots of little light bulbs going off in my head because I'm originally from the Northwest, and my my dad was very tall, broad, blonde, blue eyes. Our surname, my birth surname was Ostick, which is really strange. And I have been saying for a long time, I'm definitely part Viking, which is really interesting because where do I get that from? Why do I say that? But I definitely feel that there's something in that. So no wonder I'm drawn to talk to you about what you do, because it is really interesting to me. And I only share that in case it's sort of like little light bulbs going off for other people, for listeners who are going, oh, maybe there's something in this for me as well. Because the way I experience people a lot, not all the time, but a lot these days, is that we're very closed and closed down to sort of fit into what society seems to be telling us we should be doing and how we should live our lives. And I definitely got to age 47, tick, husband, kids, house, dog, like, oh, I should be as happy as Larry, and I was absolutely miserable. And that was the start of my massive unraveling. And I know I'm not alone. You're not alone in this. I'm not alone in this. There's a lot of us. I'd say a lot of us are highly sensitive, but not exclusively, perhaps. But who also feel like this. And like you say, it becomes a really deep spiritual healing journey, doesn't it?
It does. And definitely, for me, I had a similar experience. So if I was sort of leading a little bit of a double life, because at that point when I started out, when I was younger, I couldn't see how it was possible for someone who, I worked in universities for all of my career. I was 25 years in universities, and I still do a lot of coaching with academics in particular. And I sort of thought, well, I can't bring that spiritual side because it won't be taken seriously, or I'll be laughed at, I'll lose my credibility. All of those things were at play. So I had a second career under a different name, the Maggie Rose name, so that I could follow both at the same time. But what I realised was that I could, what's the word I'm looking for? Something you might think of like manifest. And I think about like I could use my magic to be successful in the world on the world's terms. I could absolutely do that. But it wasn't fulfilling to me, and it drained me every single day, which is why I ended up burning out. And I had a little list. I was like, well, I would like by the age of 30, I want to be at a director level role, and I want to have a terraced house with a separate room for the washing machine and 3 cats. I was very specific in all of these things. And I got all of the pizza, but I also got like really horrific arthritis.
Yes.
And I was like, what have I done? It actually made me a bit frightened of myself in that respect. Just if that makes sense, it might make sense to some people who are watching as well. That it's like, I can do it, but there's a cost, and I don't actually know what that cost is, and no one has ever told me about that. How do I do that? So I stopped doing that type of visioning work. Where you say, well, this is not what it is. No, I do it a very different way now. But no one was there to sort of say to me, there is a different way. To find all that on my own. one step at a time, and to get to a point where I was like, actually, I get to live my life on my own terms now and have a successful life on my own terms now. That doesn't require one thing or the other.
Yes, and you can do both if you want to, and also you can go completely for want of a better word, the alternative route, as in alternative to what we are sold is what we should be striving for. And you make such a good point there, that there is a real cost to people who are resonating. So listeners who are resonating with this conversation, who have that feeling in them that there is perhaps something different for them. There is perhaps something different in them that they want to explore. And by pushing that away, pushing it down, however you want to describe that, there is a real cost to that. Mm-hmm. And that often is health.
Yes.
Happiness, fulfillment. And I just thinking as I'm talking out loud, people, listeners who listen to this podcast a lot will know that I often process out loud as we're having a conversation. But it feels to me that is the root of a lot of discontent.
Yes, I would say so, absolutely. I want to share with you, if it's all right, I'm going to share with you this rune. It just popped into my mind as you were speaking. So this is called the Thurisaz rune. We get the sound from it, and we get the word thorn from it. It sort of means like thorsa, which is like giant or thorn. It's this sort of passionate, primal energy. And this was one of my teachers on my journey, because it talks about, I'm thinking about the thorn, thinking about the way in which I pulled out 6 gardening sacks of brambles from my garden yesterday. I'm covered in cuts all over my arms. I was like, I'm getting them out. But the Thurisaz rune teaches us that if we are unable to express what I think of as like either like the rose or the fruit that's inside, the thing that the thorn is there to protect, the passion or the creativity or the, feeling at that moment of intuition when you know that something's wrong and you're thinking, how do I actually say, my intuition says, all of those things that come from the heart rather than the mind necessarily, that come from the body and that come from the heart. If we're not able to offer that out into the world, the thorns become more dense, they become more entangled, they become more self-protective. All of that energy that was supposed to be released out into the world turns inwards and gets stuck inside us and becomes this sort of angry, the angry giant, energy that is stuck in us. And it's such a teacher for me, the particular rune, in saying, it's finding that balance of saying, yes, I do have my thorns, so don't mess with me. And here are my boundaries. This is what I won't do. But also, because I've got those thorns and I've got them balanced, now I'm quite happy to share my fruits and the rose and the love that's the other side of anger, isn't it? It's like what is it that the anger is protecting? It's normally something that you love and feels vulnerable and important. And I think a lot of this is my own personal view, a lot of our the autoimmune problems that we have, a lot of the burnout that we have comes from that thought circuiting that we're not able to express our fabulousness.
Fabulousness, yes.
Fabulousness.
Yeah. Gosh, I was having a real emotional reaction to what you were saying then. I was like, you kind of know when when something hits you like that, it's like, this is really, really important. And those thorns turning inward. I know quite a lot of people who might not describe it like that, but would probably understand that once it's put to them like that. Hi, if you're enjoying listening to this podcast, have you thought about joining our HSP Connection community for more connection with other HSPs? because really us HSPs thrive in the community of others.
Absolutely. And Philippa and I have created this space on an online platform where we can connect with each other deeply. We're going to have these awesome conversations, and we would love to get to know you over there in that space.
We would. So if you're interested and want to join straight away, there's a link in the show notes. And if you'd like to have a chat with either of us beforehand, please reach out. Now, back to the episode. You also say on your website, you know, we don't, and you've already mentioned there, you know, we don't recognize our magical gifts, because that's not the world really that we live in, unless, you know, unless we are blessed to be brought to be born into a family that will recognize our magical gifts and nurture those and honor those in us. And frankly, most of us are not born into birth families like that, so we have to go on our own heroine's journey, don't we, to discover our own magical gifts. So how do you do that
in terms of supporting people to find that?
How does that work with you?
It's a really good question, because it's something I wrestled with for a long time, because we have a very limited number of terms to describe what it is that we might sort of say, this is me and this is what I do, and none of them really like resonated with me, because I realized that they were also labels that I was trying to fit myself into. So if I was sort of said to like a hedge witch or a ritual magician, or they all create like images in my mind. But equally, the terms that you may have seen on my website are so far removed from our understanding that we can't connect with them. So Vitki or Seithkona or Ledrona, these are the names of people who would have been working, you know, on this land, but I didn't know what they meant. I mean, they have a very limited knowledge of what those people did. The only reason that we actually know is because there were some laws written about, you know, you will not practice as a Seithkona or a Leodor. That's how we know that people were doing that. And so for me, I sort of took a journey, let's say. This was a journey that I didn't even know that I was on when I was teaching a year-long program with the runes to teach people how to work with their energies for healing and seership and magic and, you know, all of the mysticism and all of these wonderful things. And at the beginning of the year, I would ask people to say, where are you in terms of your development and your self-understanding as a magician, healer, a seer, a mystic, and a sage? And people were like, oh, I've never thought about it in that way before. So I started to develop more of what does that mean? What does it mean to be a healer, to be drawn to the healing arts, to have a natural aptitude towards that? And I also started to notice that people who were more drawn towards the healing path, for example, would have specific sets of challenges or problems that were different to people who were drawn more to the seership path, for example. So I started to develop this sort of body of work around these 5 aspects of the magical self. And I realized that that it was like an initiatory passage of self-understanding that was missing in our society. And that is why I created a little quiz, and I started getting people to take the quiz to sort of say, you know, which one was the most, what was your most powerful magical path? And what I found was when I did it in that, like, you might call it the general population, I did a bit of a control to start with. They came out as almost 20% each of those different parts of the self. That's very interesting. When I went into my groups of people who were highly sensitive, because I ran a group of highly sensitive people at one point, and when I went into my groups of people who were magically inclined, a much, much higher proportion of healers and seers in particular, people who, I think of healers as being like attuned and responsive to the outside world. So it's like you can feel everything that's wrong. And it's like listening to an orchestra and going, off key. You know, so I think about healing in a very broad sense, as you can be a healer and be someone who specializes in IT systems, there's something off with this, that over there, or an engineer or a meteorologist looking at weather systems. For me, healers specialize in systems. There could be ecosystems, systems of people, obviously the human body or the human mind. For me, everyone who is able to sort of hone in and say, oh, there's something off there and I can feel it, and now I'm going to go in and work out what the root is and things. That to me is the healing instinct that some people just have really strongly. And if you're highly sensitive on top of that, it's really hard, because it's almost impossible to let go of it and say, it's not my problem. It's like, just because you can feel it doesn't mean that it's yours to fix. And that's one of the first things that I work with with my healers. Whereas seers are different. Seers are attuned to the inside, which says no, or yes, or mind says no, stomach says yes. What's going on here? So they're the part that actually, when the healer and the seer work together, the seer can really help the healer, because that's when you go, okay, no, that's not mine to fix. What do I need to do? But seers have a whole different set of challenges. If they're sort of disconnected from everything else and they can't manifest their ideas out into the world, they can get a little bit stuck in their heads. So you want both. So essentially, that's what I started working on. As I started to say to people, well, let's look at this and really start to unpack it and to develop those sides of the self, and to recognize that in those communities where we had loads of healers and loads of seers, the magician self was really low, far lower than the general population. I was like, why is that? And you remember when I said about, as a younger person, I was very comfortable in writing my list and saying, these are the things that I want in life. That's the magician part, saying, right. But it's the action part that says, right, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and that's fine. And I think, this is my personal theory, is that people who are very strong healers or very strong seers can feel the overexpression of the magician in our society at the moment. So that dominance and that control and that I'm in charge of nature. I'm going to get all patriarchy, all of those things. That's not a healthy magician. That's an overexpressed, I will be in charge all the time. I have no access to my seer or my healer or my mystic or my sage. I'm just all magician. And I think that we have an instinctive reaction against that, and therefore we can't claim that part of our own power. We say, oh, that's going to damage me, that's wounding. The magician is wounding our society, so I don't want it. So we look at reclaiming that part of the self, and saying, I'm not going to wound society with my magician, and if I don't have my magician, I can't have the impact that I want to have out there in the world, because I can't bring the transformation. The seer can say no, and the healer can say this needs to be fixed. But if they don't have access to their magician saying, well, I'm going to take charge of this, I'm going to take responsibility for it, I've decided it's mine, then they can't do the things that they want to do out there in the world. So yeah, that's what I work with people, and I work with them on those 5 parts of the magical self. What are their superpowers? What's their shadow side? Each of them has a shadow that we can fall into. And what are the keys to accessing that more fully? To nurturing your healer. I talked about boundaries, things that the healer needs. So they've all got keys that we can use to develop that part of us. So yeah, that's essentially what I do with individuals. If we're not looking, I do bring in, I can't help it. I'm like, oh, look at how this rune will now illustrate this point so beautifully. My Northern tradition stuff comes in, but they're like 2 strands sort of weaving around each other. That's the way that I see it.
Right. Okay. Gosh. So you talked there about seer and healer and magician, and the other 2 are mystic and sage.
Yes, the other 2 are mystic and sage. So for me, mystic is it's imagination. It's also faith. It's connection to whatever you refer to as spirit. The universe. It's those sorts of things, and it's that connection to the future possibility. So your mystic will say, this doesn't exist yet. I can see it. Know it's possible. And the magician is absolutely required for the mystic as well. You can see that all of them have to work in tandem, because a mystic can go off and, I'm going to do this. Anyone who's like a creator out there who's going, yeah, and then they don't follow through, probably have quite a high mystic.
Yeah.
And need to pull up the others. I've got a high mystic.
Okay. Interesting.
And the sage is the one that people go, oh, I'm really boring because I'm a sage. Ooh. But it's not. It's so wonderful. So the sage is the center of our memory, our ability to work with memory. It's the center of ability to communicate with, as you and I are doing right now. It's that ability to sort of curate life and have it make sense and turn it into story and meaning that we work with. So we absolutely need the sage. It's just that we've almost like pedestrianized the magic of the sage a little bit too much. We've gone, you're going to learn how to read, and you're going to learn how to write, and then that's it. Like, actually, what does that give us? What is the power of the word to create stories and to recreate stories and totally reshape our lives sits with sage. So every time anyone writes to me, they go, I've got the sage. I'm like, this is good. That's an excellent thing.
Well, is sage where the wisdom is?
It's where all of them have wisdom, but you can't pass on the wisdom without the sage.
Yes. Yeah.
Sage decides, I'm going to write this small, digestible tome of information, whereas the mystic will be like, blah, they wouldn't be able to turn it into something that somebody else could receive.
That's really interesting, because just before we started recording, I've been writing something this morning, and I have been going on about the patriarchy, and I've been getting on my high horse a little bit, which I didn't intend to when I started writing, but that's what flew out. But also, I was really keen that I used my story to pass this on. It's just so interesting. And as you're talking, I can feel threads of deep healing that I what am I trying to say? That I recognize, that I have talked about, I've experienced, that I've heard other people talk about, but you're talking about it in a slightly different way. So it feels like it's another way into that deep healing, which is no better, no worse. It's a different way in, isn't it? And what you are talking about here today is really going to resonate with some of our listeners in a way that perhaps other ways of talking about being on a healing journey, a healing path, healing our inner wounds perhaps won't resonate quite so much. But what you're saying really is doing, and vice versa. It's however one approaches our healing, I always say it doesn't matter how you do it, just do it.
Yes, it's true. I've got a tangent going, I'm going to say, and then you can say, Maggie, you're going off piste, right?
Please go off piste. I love going off piste.
Yeah. Thinking about high sensitivity and what you've just said about, I've worked really hard to express my truth and my way of working out into the world. And often when it doesn't feel safe, I've got to be, it doesn't feel safe, it doesn't feel safe, it doesn't feel safe. And sort of doing it anyway. And I remember sitting with the director of our big director on my last full-time job in a university, and saying to her, I'd really like to be able to say what I think more. And there was this really long pause. And I thought, oh no. And I knew where she was going to go with it, because she did, she needed me. I've been employed because I'm good, I'm emotionally intelligent, I'm good at influencing, I'm good at working out what people need to hear, what's going to make them feel safe, what's going to make them feel secure, what's going to get them on board with this or with that. And so my healer was out there in full swing, brokering collaborations. That's what I was really, really good at. And it meant that I very, very rarely shared my own opinion. Sometimes I didn't even know what my own opinion was anymore, because I had really disconnected from those other parts, like my seer self in particular. I disconnected from that part of myself. And I think that is something that a lot of highly sensitive people struggle with, because that is what we're often told our superpower is. You know, that ability to be like compassionate and empathic and to connect with other people and to understand where they're coming from. And I'm not saying that's not important. Of course it is important. But it's that balance of saying, okay, so sometimes I'm going to be receiving the world, and sometimes I'm going to be allowing the world to receive me.
Mm.
And that's just as important. Like I'm a broadcaster as well. I'm here to make a difference out there in the world, and it isn't just to make other people feel better. No.
Yeah, that feels really powerful. Yeah. And I don't think that's a tangent at all. I think that's absolutely spot on for who we're talking to and what we're talking about. Because I think I definitely, you make a really good point, because I am not used to having a voice. I created, I had a podcast before this one, and I created that podcast because I needed a place to be heard, because I felt like I wasn't heard. So, having read some stuff on your website, I created a safe space for me to be heard. And I kind of knew that's what I knew. My voice needed to be heard by me more than anybody else. So it was me talking to me a lot of the time. I did a lot of solo episodes, and I was sharing my story in the hope that it might help other people, but it was also helping me sharing my story. And what I haven't quite made the next step to, which is partly what I'm doing now, is now putting out a bit more about what I think, what I feel, my views, my opinions. You see, the more I'm saying this, the more I'm starting to wince a little bit. But I do feel my opinions need to come out now.
Yes.
But I am very wary at the moment, because I don't. You made a very good point there, that highly sensitive people are told that we should be this, and I don't want to be anybody who puts a highly sensitive person into a box.
Yeah.
Because we're highly sensitive people, yes. But first and foremost, we are human beings. Yes, being highly sensitive is a big part of that, but we're human beings, we're having an experience, and being highly sensitive is part of that, but it's not the whole of it. So, and we're all so individual. And that's what I want people to know and feel, that their individual magic, their individual power, their individual strength, rather than it being, you're highly sensitive, therefore this must be your strength. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and it makes me think about safe spaces, and that safe spaces are not always comfortable spaces. And I think we often, when we're on a healing journey, we may well need a deeply comfortable space to start us off, because we've been in discomfort. We don't need any more angst or aggro or anything coming through. We need a nest or like a cocoon to be in for a long period of time. But then there will come a point where we say, okay, so now I want to be in a safe space where everyone is in their like multicolored, technicolored glory, and we have rules in place that mean that I can say what I believe and what I think, and be received for that. And I work really, really hard on my group rules to that end. And I know that a lot of people get in contact with me and say, thank you so much. It goes into quite a lot of detail about the difference between people who can share their beliefs and behaviors. That there are two different things, and how we can work with that. And then there are spaces where it's just like, who shouts loud enough? No, I'm going to shout so loud I'm going to drown everybody else out, and it's competitive, isn't it, rather than collaborative. And I do think that ability to create alchemical spaces of change, where we say, you have this idea and you have that idea, and oh wow, look at that, the answer isn't in me or in you, it's in between us, and our job is to find it. Whereas over here you've got, I'm right and you're wrong, and no. It's I think it is possible to create safe spaces where we can disagree.
Yeah.
And where we can have totally different views.
Yeah, and hold two things at the same time that actually appear to be opposing, but it's not one right, one wrong. They're both equally true, but can we hold them both? And that duality has to be, the ability to hold that duality has to be part of a healing journey, because nothing is black and white, is it?
It's not.
You know. Yeah.
I read I did ethnography and anthropology. I did like a little module on it in my first degree. And it was really helpful for me as somebody who, like I described to you right at the beginning, having this life experience where what I was experiencing was not the same as what other people were experiencing, and how did I navigate that? And I was very lucky that I met some people who were, you know, one of my really good friends now, we're still like friends who still contact. He saw something, you know, and he said it first. I was like, oh my God, it was amazing. You know, it was such an amazing moment. And then I read this book, which was really annoying. I can never remember who it was by, because I didn't know it was going to be useful to me later in life, but it just stuck in my mind. And it was an ethnographer who was visiting a people, essentially. I want to say it was in Mexico. He was staying with them. And he described this process where the family would sit down together for dinner. And they would say hello to each other, and then they would say hello to their ancestors, and they would talk to them as if they were there for a period of time. But this ethnographer was like writing it down and saying, clearly it's strange customs, and they're all, and there was a lot of judgment in his writing. And then he wrote this entry, and he was just like, the father of the family came to speak to me, and he said to me, you know that we know that our ancestors aren't sitting at the table like you are, don't you? And he sort of went, oh. And it was that made me go, yeah, my God, for them, it's perfectly normal to be able to hold two realities at the same time, and to not disregard one and say, well, only one can be true. Whereas for him, he had never even occurred to him. He thought, well, clearly these people are just mad. what he was experiencing. And it was such a moment for me where I went, oh, yeah, that's it. It's not the same. My perceiving is simply, it's not the same. And that's what people are seeing. They're thinking that I can't distinguish between you and I having a conversation, and you're on the screen and I can see different things in the colour and things like that. And what I see or perceive outside, if I'm like looking for the aura of a plant or something like that, it's not the same perceiving. Doesn't mean it's not real. It's not the same perceiving.
Yeah, exactly. And I was talking to a slight shift, but same thing. I was talking to somebody the other day about being highly sensitive, and she said it's like living life in 4D. And I love that, because which kind of goes a little bit towards what you're saying, not quite. So 4D is everything bigger, bolder, sharper, brighter. I mean, you're saying that and more. There's like another element to it. There's another dimension. There's another way to feel it and experience it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's a very good way of looking at it. And perhaps part of the healing journey is saying, I am now reclaiming my right to experience the world in 4D, when the other people are telling me that only 3 dimensions exist.
Exactly. Oh, I think this is probably a good place to stop, much as I could speak to you for hours. You talked about safe spaces just a few minutes ago. So I know you've got a safe space or two. In fact, I joined your Facebook group yesterday. So and I agree with with what you said about the rules. They are very clear, and they are very I can tell that you are really intentional about the way you hold the space there. So I can't wait to interact in there a bit more. But can you tell us a little bit about your safe spaces, what you do, what you have to offer anybody who's listening and is interested?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would love to. So yes, the Hearth space on Facebook is my is my open to anyone, as long as you follow the rules. It's a private space, and you can come and join. It's a really lovely space full of very special people. I feel totally honoured to hold that space. There is a Northern European tradition feel to that group, But it's also about exploring personal magic. So you have to sort of have an interest in Northern European tradition stuff, because I do post quite frequently, and I do a live every Monday. I'm actually doing this evening. Normally I do it in the morning, but every week I'm out there talking about one of the topics that we've been discussing today. And I have two major programs that people can come in, and there are groups attached to each of them, so that you journey with your cohort. One is called Awaken to the Runes, which is my year-long rune program, and the other one is called Amplify Your Magic, which is my deep dive into the magical self. Lots of online resources. There are 5 online retreats where we do a power retrieval process for each part of the magical self, which I absolutely love doing. And so if you're interested in either of those pieces, what I would suggest for finding out about your magical self, I can give you the link to my quiz, because you can take the quiz and find out what's your strongest magic. It's a nice little starting place to do that. And with the runes, I do just a little mini package for people where they can find their sun rune. It's like where the sun was, which rune it was in when you were born. And I do a little awakening package for that. So it's got a power song, and it's got this sort of like old story that you can listen to. And it's got meditations, which are more for the healing side of, we talk about the Thurisaz rune. So I do a meditation of feeling that old thorn energy coming off the body, and finding the rose like opening up into the center. So yeah, it's a sort of a little deep dive into one of the runes if people are interested in doing that. So that's on my website. But those would be the two things I would recommend if you're thinking about, I'd like to know what this is all about, would be do the quiz and do the sun rune package. And yes, I would be joyful to welcome many more lovely people into the Hearth space as well, because it's a very special community.
Yeah. And are those 2 packages that you talked about online? They
are online, yes. So one of the things that sort of distinguishes my work a little bit is that the majority of it is online. Yeah. I'm starting to do some in-person stuff, but it's because so many of my people are in other places in the world.
Exactly. It's the way to connect with everybody, isn't it? Yeah. I completely get that.
Right. People who are highly sensitive, who are a bit like, we quite like to do this in a more spaced out way rather than everything.
Yeah, and not too many people, and it's easier to have a boundary with the energy and stuff. It's like it is. Yeah, no, I just wanted to double check that it was online, because I thought it was. Maggie, this has been amazing. How quick can nearly an hour pass? Thank you so much for your time, your enthusiasm, your work, and just bringing yourself here and having this conversation with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philippa. It's been my absolute pleasure.
Cool. So that's it for today. And remember that there is great strength in your sensitivity, and the world needs you to be who you are. So it's bye from me, and bye from Maggie.
Thanks for listening to HSP Connection. If you've enjoyed listening, we'd love you to hit the follow or subscribe button, as this helps other people find us. And it also means you won't miss an episode.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate the podcast and share it with anyone you think might be interested. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave us a review.
To get in touch with us, you can email us at hspconnectionpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you with your thoughts and comments on the episodes, as well as suggestions for future topics and guests.
We are both HSP coaches and speakers. And to find out more about Robbie, go to robbielee, leigh.com.
And to find out more about Philippa, go to boldhsp.com. See you next time.